sort of doing some work here for and with the FBI of the United States of America in relation to a vehicle that whose owner or who has the owner's registration, or the person who's registered as the owner of that vehicle currently has offended the law in the US and is in their custody. How do these two states work together in these matters, and how big a deal it is that Shatta Wale is found having a vehicle whose owner is currently in custody, which vehicle itself is questionable?
Yes, just for your listeners to understand, so what's basically happening is 4 people were recently extradited in relation to, I think it was $100 million romance scam. And when the U.S. tries to get the money back in terms of to just give the victims back the money, etc., sometimes they'll have to do like a restitution order. And this particular restitution order that, Shatta Wale is involved in is like a $4.75 million restitution order. And basically the U.S. wrote to the Attorney General's Department, and the Attorney General's Department referred it to EOCO. And EOCO would have to apply to court for an enforcement order. And so just having briefly looked at the facts, it's quite interesting because it looks like Shatta Wale is like mounting an innocent purchaser defense. You see what I mean? So EOCO can't automatically just send that car back. They have to go to the High Court, and the judge is going to look at the U.S. order. He or she is going to look at, does it fit our standards for asset forfeiture and crime? It certainly does. And then this is the final hurdle the judge is going to look at. Is there a local owner or innocent purchaser who can claim that, they had absolutely no idea, had no knowledge of this? And so that's why it's quite interesting to read that he said, someone from the street, he lost the person's contact, etc., etc. So he's basically trying to mount an innocent purchaser defense.
Even though we do know that buyer beware is also a principle in law that may be used against him.
Yes, definitely. And perhaps that is why EOCO has added, money laundering and tax evasion and different sorts of charges. Maybe they are warranted too, in terms of they've looked at how his lifestyle is, and maybe things don't show up in the books. But it's also a way of pressuring him to perhaps just, give up the car, basically. But it is very interesting, just because it seems now that the FBI and EOCO are cooperating more and more, because, our former finance minister, the FBI has given the green light, or State Department's given the green light for him to come. And then 4 people are being extradited. So it seems like they're having more of a relationship to swap information and to swap people, basically. And Shatta Wale's just been caught up in all of that, basically.
Interesting. Now, the defense that he's putting up is innocence. But currently, he's not even on trial yet. The EOCO is asking him to go home, provided he provides surety, and the amount that has been pegged is $10 million. There are some views that EOCO is detaining people unlawfully under the guise of very harsh bail conditions. What's your comment on that as a lawyer?
I don't agree with that, just because, the Economic and Organized Crime Office has a very, very specific mandate to do with money laundering, proceeds of crime, fraud, tax evasion, corruption, cybercrime, and anything that is economic or financial crime. And once you get involved in these sort of cases, money moves fast, people buy things to hide things, and it becomes a lot more complicated. So EOCO has the authority and the mandate to uncover a lot of things. And once there is a suspicion, that suspicion has to be followed through with evidence, such as, did one of the 4 defendants that got flown out, did he ever have this in his possession? Is there a witness as to how Shatta Wale got it? They're building a case, basically, and I don't think they would just, walk up to anybody on the street. They normally watch people for months, and they have evidence that they haven't released to him or his lawyer, etc. and they know what they're doing with this. But Shatta Wale probably won't be charged with this car crime. You know what I mean? It is a simple mutual legal assistance request made to the Attorney General, who referred it to EOCO, and all they want is to get an enforcement order to send it back, basically. And they'll have to go to the High Court to get that enforcement order. So Shatta Wale is definitely not going to be prosecuted for the crime, but, you know, there are other things that are up for grabs in terms of, you know, tax evasion, etc., because perhaps his lifestyle doesn't match the income. Who knows? I mean, I can't speculate.
And the issue of possession of quote and unquote a stolen item, how about that? Or that's too far?
I mean, a lot of people. I bought second-hand cars in this country. A lot of people buy second-hand cars. You know, I think there's more second-hand cars in this country than brand new cars. Do you see what I mean? So to be an innocent purchaser is normal, sort of thing. But, you know, once you're dealing with that level of car, in terms of it is so high-end, there's so few Lamborghini Uruses in the country, even though it's 2019, there's probably like, I mean, there can't be more than 10, 15 in the whole country, you know. And so once you have that, you know, the people who sell it are often very proud of their cars, or they say, oh, so owned it before. You see what I mean? So there's a presumption that one would know the history of the car. But he has an innocent purchaser claim, one that he's probably going to mount if they try and enforce the, you know, the order to send that car back, basically, or to ship that car back. So, yeah, I mean, it is interesting, but EOCO doesn't have an easy job, because anything involving economic and organized crime is very layered, just because the money has to move, the houses have to be bought, the cars have to be bought, and it's just to make everything look a lot messier, so you can't trace it. So they're probably just investigating, and they've probably been investigating it for like quite a few months before they would do this. I don't think EOCO would just knock on somebody's door and do this.
Under the law, would there be a need to send Shatta Wale to the United States? I know that the officials are asking for the vehicle, but would there be a need, based on your knowledge of how these things work, where they would ask that EOCO sends him over so he could aid investigations, perhaps?
Definitely not. I mean, this is, they've already made the case in America. I mean, that's why it's a restitution order of $4.74 million. They've proven that, you know, money was acquired by those individuals, and they basically can't get their hands on all that money. So the asset is supposed to, you know, forfeit that amount of money up to a certain amount. So as soon as, if the car goes back, then the amount is reduced, etc., because it's a restitution order. So it's purely administrative in terms of the procedure. AG's department referred this to EOCO, and then EOCO would have to go through the AG's department probably to apply to the High Court, and a Ghanaian judge is going to go from, you know, to go and look at the enforcement order if it's necessary, and they will look at, does anybody have an innocent purchaser claim, and if the judge is satisfied, then the car won't go back. So Ghana has authority, and Ghana has sovereignty when it comes to that.
Thank you so much for speaking to us.
Okay, thank you.
That's Amanda Clinton. She's head of Chambers Clinton Consultancy, speaking to us there.